In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to apply dimensions to the parts in our drawing file. If you look here at the ribbon, you'll see that typically when we're putting the views on, the command bar the tab is Place Views. Right next to that is a tab called Annotate, and we're going to select that. And annotate means to write or to draw, to make notes. So we're going to annotate this drawing, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put dimensions, and it's the very first option here on the left of the ribbon. So the Annotate tab, Dimension. Now we're going to apply the principles that you learned in the dimensioning guidelines. Both you should have watched the PowerPoint and you should have read over the Word document. I'm only going to dimension one of these parts. You're going to be dimensioning all of your parts, following the techniques I show you here and the ones that you learned about in the guidelines. So I'm positioning my cursor and my paper. Remember, I can scroll in and out with the wheel. I can press down on the wheel and pan the drawing to get it where I want it to be. So we're going to apply dimensions, and dimensioning the parts on the paper is very similar to dimensioning the part on the part file. Do you remember that in the sketch mode we applied dimensions? It's very, very similar. So there are a couple different ways we could do this. You'll notice that as I put the cursor onto the lines, it's only giving me the dimension or highlighting one of the blocks. So what I want to do is I'm only going to be dimensioning the length, the width, and the height of each individual part. So each part will have 3 dimensions. That's it. So where should I put the length measurement? Well, if I'm going to dimension the length, I could do it either here, from this corner to this corner. There's my dimension right there. I can either put it there, and I'm going to go ahead and press the Escape key to cancel that. Click on Dimension again, or I could place it here. And you'll notice I'm selecting the endpoints rather than the midpoint or the endpoint here, and I'll show you why in a second. Now, you'll notice that as I drag the number down, when it gets to a certain distance, it's going to snap into place, and the line is going to become dotted. It's giving me a hint as to where it thinks I should put the dimension. And if I do that consistently with all my dimensions, I'll have a nice, standardized, even, well spaced out drawing. So you're going to want to follow that. You do not want to put the dimensions on the part. You do not want to put the dimensions on the line. You don't want it overlapping. You don't want it to crowd. You don't want to put it down here. You want to let it go ahead and snap into place and use that position for your dimension. You click the left mouse button to place it where you want it to be. I don't know why it's going so slow. Now, in this particular setting, in my file for some reason, it's automatically editing the dimension when I put it. You'll notice here these little symbols, these little greater than and less than symbols. It's allowing me to place other information about the drawing onto the dimension. And there will be times, that we'll learn later on in the year, that we want to put tolerances, nodes, different things next to the dimension. We're not doing that now. So if this box pops up, I just want you to select Cancel. What that's going to do is going to just go ahead and give you the dimension of the lines that you're selecting. So that would be considered the length of the part. I want to dimension the height of the part. So I'm going to do the height here. The height I can do off of either this view or this view. Now look what happens if I decided to select the midpoint for this height. Watch what happens. I'll snap it into place. There's that consistent distance, and I'll click it. And I'll say Cancel. Now, actually, it didn't do what I thought it was going to do. In this case, it did put a gap here. Do you see this distance between the dimension and the dimension and the part? You want that gap to be there. And sometimes I've noticed that if you place the dimension from an endpoint, like over here, we'll try it here. You place it on the endpoint and drag it over this way, that the line, the leader line, goes all the way over to the endpoint. So we don't want that to happen. We want there to be a gap there. All right, so we've got our length, we've got our height, and now we want to select our width. Now, where will we do the width? We could do the width here. You want to try to, as much as possible, put the dimensions in between the views. That's one of the things. So maybe we could put the width of the part. Well, you wouldn't want to do it here because you have this other feature coming up. So the best place for the width would be right here. I don't want to crowd this. I'm not going to put it over here, so I'm going to go ahead and put it down here. It's okay. So I'll select, but let me see if I can get that gap not to be. Let's say I select this point and then I drag it down. And I click it. Cancel. Okay, there it did it. See that? You see how there's no gap in the line? That's because I selected the endpoints way up here. If you make a mistake, you press Escape to get out of the dimension, the dimensioning tool, and then I select the dimension I want to delete, and I press Delete on the keyboard. Or you can right-click. You can right-click on the dimension and select Delete as well. So we're going to redo this dimension. We're going to go ahead and click here on these endpoints. Let it snap into place. Boom. Cancel. Okay? So there we have the length, we have the width, and we have the height of the part. That's all I want you to do. I want you to select the proper views. I want you to use the dimensioning guidelines as much as possible. And that's how you're going to dimension all of these parts. You do not need to dimension, well, we might as well. You might as well dimension these as well because I want to see that you've done everything properly. And if you've made a mistake, these will not be the right dimensions. You'll have some errors in there. Okay, now there's one last thing I want to do on this drawing before we learn how to do the title block. And what that is, I want you to put underneath of each drawing which one it is. You could do it underneath or you could do it on top. I'm going to do mine underneath. And in order to do that, we're going to come over here to where it says text. Text is exactly what it says. It's text. I'm going to be putting text on the drawing, and I'm doing that in order to label what these parts are. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to call this one. I'm going to click where I want the text to be. And on my drawing, I want it to be in all caps. You can see it's going to be 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to increase that. Let's make this 1/4 of an inch high. Okay, so we can change the size to 1/4 of an inch. And the reason I'm doing that is because this drawing, I'm going to shrink it down when we print it. I'm not going to be able to see it very well, so I want the print to be a little bit larger. All right, so I'm going to say here, I'm going to put my cap locks on, and I'm going to type in sub 1. That's going to be subassembly 1. And that's it. And there it comes in, sub 1. I'll press Escape to enter the text, to leave the text tool, and then I can move this to where I want it to be by grabbing it and positioning it where I want it. I'll put it right here. Sub 1. Go back to the text tool. I'll come up here. I'm going to change this to 1/4 of an inch, approximately. Sub 2. You'll notice it's all capitals. It's okay. And there's sub 2. Press Escape, get out of the command, and move this to where you want it to be. I want it to be right about there. Sub 1, sub 2, sub 3, sub 4, sub 5. Or you could start at the top. You can label them however you want to label them. I just want there to be 5 sub-assemblies for each one. So you're going to go ahead and go through your drawing, dimension it completely, put the titles for each one of the parts, and save your work when you're done, and then we're going to learn how to do the title block next.